Hello everybody, welcome to Digital Doughnuts. This is a video game book club podcast inspired by Pixelated Playgrounds podcast of the same nature. Today I'm joined by Father.
Hello everybody, glad to be here.
And today we're just going to be discussing the video game OXENFREE. We're going to be kind of breaking it down, sharing our experiences with it, and mostly just discussing various aspects of it. To give some background and some context to who we are individually, me, Professor Powell, I am what you might call an aspiring game designer. So I'm kind of coming at this from the perspective of I want to make my own games, and I thought it would be a great idea to kind of play through a lot of somewhat well-known ones, but also smaller ones to see what I would do in its place, or how I would influence the game, how I would make it, whatever. And yeah, both of us are kind of in school right now studying various forms of art.
Father here. I am also less of a game developer, more of just an aspiring digital artist. So I do a lot of design and art, photography, kind of coming at this and analyzing these games from a visual standpoint, art standpoint, how they put everything together in the overall direction. But also play a lot of video games. I play games like Titanfall 2, Minecraft, and Warframe, and I'm really excited to be here and to see what we have to say. We had a lot of fun playing the game, so this should be good.
Yes, that being said, there's going to be massive spoilers for OXENFREE. So if you've not played it and you would like to play it, I heavily recommend that you do that before listening to this, because we will be talking about everything we experienced in our time playing and everything that we didn't experience. We'll be talking about all the various aspects of this game. So with that being said, I'll give a brief introduction. OXENFREE is a teenage drama-esque, supernatural... Oh, I guess I'll just read the wiki. OXENFREE is a supernatural mystery graphic adventure game developed and published by Night School Studios. It was released for Microsoft Windows, OS X, and Xbox One in January 2016. PlayStation 4 and Linux versions were released later in 2016. And so we played the PC version, the one on Steam. And I guess that's basically the little synopsis. So I guess we'll just hop right into the discussion.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Our first impressions with the game. I guess to give context to this, what were your expectations going into it? Like, what were you expecting?
Gotcha. I'd never heard of the game until you mentioned it to me. I had no idea it existed. I played like a few indie games, but mostly just like mainstream stuff. So you're like, oh, check this game out. I looked through it and I was like, okay, it's a horror game, but it's not horror. It's like just creepy, atmospheric. I didn't even watch too many of like the trailers on Steam because I was like, I just want to see what it's like and experience it. I was expecting puzzles, and I was expecting jump scares and a little bit of like atmosphere, and that was it. Other than that, I didn't watch a whole lot. I read the thing. I don't really know a narrative. What does that mean? How much of a story actually is there going to be in this game? So kind of like kept my mind open, but I was not expecting what we ended up with, which I really liked.
I would have to agree. I came into this almost completely blind. I almost knew nothing about OXENFREE except for the title and that it was only $10 and it seemed short enough to play and the time frame that we had. So
there you go. That sounds good.
So yeah, I did the same thing. I came into this almost completely blind. I didn't even watch any trailers on Steam. I only read maybe that brief description that it gives about the game. And to be honest, I think I was more expecting like kind of a puzzle adventure type of 2D experience. I wasn't expecting the amount of kind of the horror vibes it gives off. Even though it isn't necessarily super horror-esque, there are definitely a lot of moments where it creeps you out. So
Yeah, yeah.
I guess when I first hopped into the game, my first impression was, okay, this dialogue is amazing. That
Oh,
was
absolutely. Oh
immediately
my
you're
gosh.
like, okay, these feel like real people
It
that
was
are
so
talking
good.
to each other. It was great. I think it is just an incredible example of voice acting
Hmm.
and writing coming together to make a really really convincing group of teenagers.
Oh yeah, abs. That was the first, yeah, same thing. I was like, all right, I like the art. Let's see where this goes. Holy cow, these are real people. Even when I would click on the little bubbles that pop up for your character's option of dialogue, whenever you click those, your character will either just interrupt everybody, like
Yeah.
actually interrupt. I was like, whoa, like, oh, I should like time when I say things with the conversation to let it flow more smoothly, or just interrupt everybody to talk. I was like, this is okay. This is a new level of actual dialogue and involved conversation.
hmm Honestly, for me, I think that interrupting thing was a positive and sometimes a negative because I wanted to hear more of the conversation that was going on, but I also wanted to say something. And so you had to kind of decide if you wanted to say something or if you wanted to just hear the conversation. So it was interesting how it provided that choice.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I let's see. I think other than that dialogue, I mean, I guess let's talk about you play as Alex,
Hmm.
um, and you're kind of on this boat with a group of friends, or kind of friends. Maybe one is your arch
Hmm.
enemy.
We have for sure one friend.
One
The
definite
pumpkin.
friend, Ren. So you
He's
have
great.
it's Alex. Ren is Alex's friend. Clarissa is Alex's enemy, essentially because of some
Hmm.
history they share.
Yeah, yeah.
Nona, who is kind of like a friend by proxy
Hmm.
type of person that Ren has a crush on, and then finally Jonas, who is Alex's stepbrother, who is
Brand new.
coming, yeah, brand new to the group, coming in, and they are all on a ferry going to what's the name of the island? Uh,
Hey, oh shoot.
I don't remember, but they're
Some
going
island.
to
Yeah.
some island to do a high school party and get drunk or whatever. And it's a pretty
Hmm.
normal yearly thing that the school does. But you five, I think five, are the
Hmm.
only ones who are showing up for this one this year. Um, and a very important detail is that Alex brings her little portable radio with her.
Oh yes.
Something
This is a
that
cool effect.
yeah, because there's a little rumor about some weird effects that happen by this cave. Um, and so I guess immediately when I first entered here, I guess we can move on kind of to uh, the the graphics and presentation part
Yeah,
of
yeah. Let's talk about
the
that.
discussion.
I really enjoyed the visuals that they went with this. With an indie game like this, that's not some big AAA studio or doesn't have, hundreds of people working on it. It's really interesting to see how they end up taking the graphics. You see a lot of like 2D side-scrolling pixel-based games because pixel art is pretty simple. It can be a lot, it can be very detailed and complex, but it's easy to get started in. It's easy to make.
Hmm
And I was interested to see, all right, we got a side scrolling, all right, it's 2D. What are you going to bring in terms of graphics? And I thought it was pretty, some stuff was beautiful, absolutely.
For
That they
sure.
did a really good job. Some stuff wasn't, and I think they did that on purpose. That some of the locations that you went in later just felt like grimy and run down and weren't pretty to look at, but fit the scene really well. So I think they did a good job of getting the art to fit their scene, and they were still able to tell like an intense story, even with us pulled back and watching everything at once. With a side-scrolling game, we're not the camera like in a your traditional horror game like Five Nights at Freddy's. The effect is because you can't see everything. That's what's scary. But we can see everything, and it was still intense and still focused. I thought they did a really good job with that.
I very much agree. I think graphically there are, like you said, some moments where the game is pretty breathtaking. Like it
Hmm.
is is very nice to look at in some moments. But I also think there was a little bit of, I mean, I think the animation was lacking just a little bit, especially in
Hmm.
the character area. I mean, this did come out in 2016, and it was a small studio, um, and so I don't think it really took away from anything.
No,
Uh,
you didn't pull you out, but you did notice
but
that
it wasn't
a couple.
shocking. Yeah, it wasn't. Didn't feel like uh, it was really carried by the dialogue to make you
Hmm.
feel like this world and these people are believable. You know, in a lot of ways, it just felt like your character was just a vessel to get you to other dialogue options. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there were a few times that as the gameplay progressed, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more later, but when having a dialogue conversation, if I just happened to be standing in the wrong spot, our characters would be talking to each other but facing the wrong way, or someone would get stuck on the ladder for like 20 seconds, or,
Mm-hmm.
little things like that that came down to just like how much time are they going to put into the animation? And they're like, listen, it works, okay? We put the money in the dialogue. Be happy. So definitely some
Yes.
things to notice there, but like you're saying, it didn't detract from the overall experience. Just something to be like, oh, okay, looks like this isn't a AAA studio. Oh well,
Yeah.
let's keep going.
I certainly believe that if the animation quality, or just I guess the overall quality in that regard was a little bit more enhanced, it would have increased immersion. But that
Hmm.
being said, the fact that it wasn't amazing did not take away anything. Does that, if that
Hmm.
makes sense?
Yeah.
Um, but I do, overall, I really do think they had a great, just cohesive style to the game. My
Yes.
favorite parts of the graphics were honestly like the loading screens after someone had taken a picture.
Oh,
Um,
those were great.
yeah, occasionally throughout the game, Jonas, I think it's Jonas mostly, who he will bring out his phone and take a, or no, he'll bring out little, uh, one of those
Oh,
cameras that
Polaroid?
will, a Polaroid, yeah, it will print out a thing, and you get to see that in like the loading screen between areas, and it was really cool because a lot of the times you actually, if you paid enough attention, you could see little Easter eggs in the background of like this
Oh, that was
creepy
fun.
ghost that is looming over Alex or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And so that definitely added to it. Um,
I
I
felt
think,
like
yeah. Go ahead.
when you talk about graphics and the pictures in particular, it feels like whenever after a big event happens and someone took a selfie and then we're looking at the photo during the load screen, it felt like that was when I really saw the characters for who they were, because the art style with the photographs isn't your 3D models. It's actually hand drawn of the characters in the
Mm-hmm.
situation with the same setting. I felt like those were such important moments that let us see into the actual world of the game, and then the loading screen would end, and we'd be put back, and I'm like, okay, I'm not looking at the world anymore. I'm playing the game because my character's this 3D model that's walking around, and I've got to move her, and there's a little bit of bugginess. And I really liked the load screens because I was like, dang, all that just happened, those are the people that it happened to, and I could like see them and experience that. And then I'd get pulled back over, and maybe not out of the experience, but over into the game again, where I'd continue to help those experiences happen.
Yes, I definitely agree. It makes you feel, it makes those characters a little bit more real when you see stuff like that, because
Hmm.
that's just detail you don't normally see when you're walking around the world. Um, I guess if I was to give this a comparison between uh styles of animation, because this is like a 2.5D type game, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah, yeah.
it's you have a 3D character, but you are in a 2D environment. You are going up and down on 2D maps, and there in the background there is some parallaxing where, you know, the
Hmm.
background does move separate from what is in the foreground. Uh, but I think if I was to compare it uh, to, I mean, it's an unfair comparison probably, but it reminded me, that kind of style reminded me a lot of Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yep,
And I
yep.
think graphically, Ori is the pinnacle of what you can
Oh,
do with
yeah.
this style, right?
Seriously, seriously.
Not in terms of, I mean, artistic interpretation is always going to be different, But Ori is just gorgeous to look at, right? And especially the animation on the characters and everything. But again, Ori did not have a branching dialogue thing with crazy in-depth changing the ending based on choices type stuff. So
Exactly.
you kind of have to think about, what did they have with what they were trying to do, but we will talk about this a little bit later. There is a sequel coming out, OXENFREE 2,
Oh.
and I saw the trailer for that, and it does look like they do address a lot of that kind of lacking in animation, just based on the trailer I saw. So I do think it was definitely more of a limited resources thing, more so than they didn't want to make it, whatever. And that being said, I don't want to say that I don't think this game looks great, because I do. I'm just saying that it could look better. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. At some point, you have to say, all right, when are we going to stop working on this and start working on the next thing? And they had to pick a point, and they did.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about graphics and presentation. Let's talk about the music and the sound design.
That works good. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. What did you think of the music?
It was interesting. It was interesting. So I felt like there were two main places when I think of when the music was sometimes when you're just passively moving around, and then the times where after one of the episodes when you get like possessed or someone gets possessed and you've got to rewind those tape or speed up the tapes to get to the right speed. Those are the two moments I think that's when I heard the music. That's how I remember it. I thought the music itself was super well done. That it fit the vibe they were going for, which was a really original like flavor of music of this a little bit like old fashioned but still like haunting, and fits with this kind of decrepit broken down islands and these poor kids with their decrepit broken down lives because all bad stuff's happened to them. And I thought it fit really well. Gameplay wise, there were some things that like towards the end where some of the characters were talking, Jonas was talking about the music, and I was like, man, that sounds so familiar. I was like, does it? I think I've heard that. I don't really remember. And so there was a few things where I was like, maybe I should have spent more time in the world, and I would have absorbed more of the music, and it would have made more of an impact as a mechanic instead of just kind of a polishing feature. But overall, I thought the music fit the environment well. There wasn't anything that stood out as, whoa, that's too loud or that's too soft. Everything worked really well.
Yeah, I agree. The music itself was very nice. Like the individual pieces, I think worked really well. And I think when the timing worked well with what was happening in the game, it really set the mood nicely. It was great. But overall, there were quite a few moments in the game where the music just didn't feel like it fit. It didn't feel like I guess right at the beginning when you're on that ferry traveling to the island, the music was so loud, and I even tried to go into the settings to turn down music down, but there are no settings to change the different volumes in this game, just so you know. So that kind of put me off. It kind of made it hard to enjoy certain parts of the game. It didn't happen very often, but I guess I might be a little bit spoiled with many modern releases that have dynamic and adaptive soundtracks. But I do feel like this game really would have benefited from having the songs and the music fit better with what is happening on screen. Again, overall, it was great, and a lot of the times the music hit perfectly. But there were just a few times where I was kind of just taken out of the experience because of the music that was playing. When you get out of it, for example, when you get out of a time loop, they have that like old timey music going, which is fine, but that song will last forever until you leave the next area. They will have moved on talking about something totally different, and then you will still be hearing this thing. And so it feels like you're kind of stuck in this post-time loop victory feeling where everyone else has moved on, Not like a huge negative thing, but I do think it could have been a little bit better done. and it would have increased the immersion for me at least.
I think largely we see the developers juggling the focus between the music and the dialogue as they try to figure out which of these needs to be more present to carry the story. And they do a pretty good job of it, like you're saying, but sometimes, they're like, okay, the music is super important here. Let's keep this as the priority. And as a player, it's kind of up to you, whichever one you listen to more. And so if you're just like, okay, the music was great, let's hear what they have to say about the situation, but the developer felt that the music needs to be the focus right here, then you get that experience you're talking about, where you're kind of pulled back a bit and you're like, okay, we're done. We've moved on. Why is this haunting melody playing when we're chatting cheerfully about some stuff?
Yeah, we're
what's going
talking
on
about
right now?
Ren who just ate a weed brownie,
Yeah,
and
this is funny,
we're listening to this old creepy tape,
Yeah, I'm like,
or
okay.
whatever. Yeah. Um, yeah. I guess, did you kind of have that similar feeling at all, or what was your
Definitely
experience with that?
at the beginning, just like you were saying, that first boat ride, I was
Yeah.
like unsure of what was supposed to. I always feel like I go into games trying to figure out what the developer wants me to do so that I can experience the game correctly, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the beginning, I was like, is this dialogue important? Am I supposed to be talking? Do I need to be choosing a bubble option to talk every time? There's these little like things I can look at on the ship. Are we going to progress unless, maybe we're stuck and I need to talk about each little thing on the ship and that'll move me
Yeah.
forward. I just wasn't sure what was going on, and the music was playing loud, and that first bit was a little confusing with the tutorial being like, you know how to use a keyboard? Okay, bye. And I
Yeah.
was like, what kind of game is this? I didn't read anything on it. I'm going in blind, and I definitely think at the beginning that was the biggest one for me, and overall I didn't notice it too much.
I definitely think the examples I gave in the middle of the game were not anywhere near as bad as right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a bit
That
harsh.
initial ferry ride, the dialogue itself, like when we talked about in our first impressions, the dialogue was really nice, but then that music comes in, and it seems like
Hmm.
it's that song specifically is the kind of song that I would have over some kind of like silent traveling moment, right? You wouldn't
Yeah.
have, it was like this almost synthy, like 80s synth type thing, which this game has a lot of, and it fits really well.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but it was having this, and it was really loud, and it just didn't feel right because you're on this boat and all these people are talking, and the tone of the conversation just does not match the tone of what they're
Yes,
talking about.
that was
Um,
big.
so that was definitely the most egregious example, and so it wasn't great for first impressions.
Hmm.
Honestly, it
Yeah, I
kind
was
of,
like,
yeah, it kind
is
of left a
this it?
little. And I paused the game and look at the settings, and there's no way to turn that music down because it would have been fine if that was just a little bit quieter, but it was just too
Hmm.
loud. And I actually did look on the forums a little bit, and it seems like that's a common issue with a lot of people, is that they thought some of the music was just way too loud.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So overall, though, I think the music is great. Moving on to sound design, I think the
Hmm.
sound design was phenomenal.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think everything to do with, I mean, not even talking about dialogue because that is technically sound design, but I mean, um, the sounds of when you turn your radio in to
Yes.
the
Oh man.
evil ghost things, that that is a good freaking feeling. You feel like creeped out when you do that.
Oh man, it was nut. The radio, dude.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Like as you're scrolling through the radio trying to find the right number to unlock something, one of the doors, or to summon in the ghosty things or do some, and you keep hearing all this like super crazy chatter, and then you hit them and it's like and you're like, oh
Hmm.
man, here
Yeah.
we go. And then we jump back into art real quick with the triangle slowly getting drawn, and you're like, oh, what is going on? I don't understand. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And like as the player, especially at the beginning, like the sound just like tells you to keep going and edges you on, while at the same time you're kind of panicked,
Yeah,
like,
you're like, I don't want to do
is
this.
this good? Is this bad? Do I have a choice? I kind of want to see what happens though. Like, here we go.
Yep.
So good, so good.
Super true, super true. I that sound design, especially when it came to everything supernatural, was
Mm-hmm.
just phenomenal. So well done. When you're cranking the tapes to kind of get the right speed as
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
slows and speeds up. Really, really good stuff. And those are the kinds of things that kept me in this world, kept me
Mm-hmm.
invested and interested outside of the story. Um, One of my favorite parts, I just want to say, when it come to the radio, because we were talking about the sound,
Mm-hmm.
was when you would be, I don't know if it, I can't remember exactly when it would happen, but I think I was in like this antique store getting the key for the boat or trying to find the key for
Okay.
that lady's manor.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, back at her house or
I
something.
was
Okay.
listening to the radio, and it said, it was like, all of us become a alpha something tango, whatever, and it was
Yeah, yeah,
using
phonetic alphabet.
the phonetic alphabet, right? And I was like, what is it saying? And so I wrote it down, and it said all of us become an antique eventually, or whatever. And I was like,
Ooh.
ooh. And then one of the other ones was like, don't turn off the Leo, whatever, and it
Yeah,
said, it
yeah, yeah.
spelled out light. And I was
Ooh.
like, oh shoot. So I thought that was really cool that it just kind of gave you the opportunity to write something down, or if you could,
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have the mental capacity in the moment to remember the words. I can spell it in my
Yeah, I
mind.
feel yeah.
Um but in that moment I wrote it down, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's kind of cool. And it almost added to the creep factor because it didn't throw that creepy stuff right at you. It just kind of let it be there. And if you wanted to, you could go out and write it down and figure it out yourself, which was great. I
As
loved it.
Agreed. As we like progress through the story and realize that these ghost things that were haunting us, this entity or entities, are these dead shipment and dead Navy officers on the submarine, then it all starts to click as you're like, whoa, on one of these channels, there's just Morse code playing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, I,
I,
I
w-
kind of want to look that up. Like, what do I do?
I
Is that
wish I knew
important?
Morse code.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow, and then exactly whiskey, tango, alpha, beta, and like lists all these things, and you get all these weird snippets of like dialogue and radio communication. They themed all these puzzles, all these audio cues around like classic Navy communication, which was such a good move to like help you under. It worked really well with the antagonist ish, if you call them that,
hmm
and with the ghosts and their actual setting, and at the same time provided so much for the player to like dive into. I was like, oh, this is cool. I love my favorite thing was how the ghosts sounded,
Yeah, I was
like how
about to
they
say.
spoke. So I like the first thing, because I was like, it's like Bumblebee from Transformers, but a million times better. This is so sick. What the heck?
Yeah.
It was like evil, but it was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, I was about to mention that exact same thing because throughout the whole game, and especially the limited interactions, in my honest opinion, the limited interactions at the beginning were my favorite parts
Hmm.
because you would still didn't really understand the world very much, and it was a lot more creepy uh, to like first tune into the radio and they start talking to
Yeah.
you through this radio, and it's like different radio clips from way back, and
Hmm.
it was great. Definitely my favorite part. I think in the near the end where they switch to speaking through people, it kind of loses a lot of its charm in that
Hmm.
way. I definitely think it is a much better creep factor when you're talking through the radio,
Hmm.
especially with the style they have. Um,
As you once you discover what they are, like it loses a lot of the mystery was what made them so threatening,
yeah,
and what they can do, but largely the mystery. And once you discovered like, oh, that's what they are, I was like, okay. You're just, I mean, even though they're, still, non-human and they're all creepy and weird, I was like, okay, well, once I figured out what you are, kind of lost it, and they started talking through people. So you just got like angry dialogue from Clarissa or from Ren or somebody like that. I agree. They kind of they didn't feel as threatening. Instead, the choices that you had to make towards the end of the game rose to the surface
hmm
and became a lot more prevalent as they toned down the fear from what am I facing to what am I going to do now that I know that I'm what I'm facing.
yeah. I I agree. I think let's actually just go ahead and move on from this section and start talking about the story.
We got to start out. Did you leave anybody behind or kill anybody? I want to hear what you did.
I really like to be the nice guy in video games. I don't know why. I will never do a genocide route in Undertale, and I cannot. I felt like I wanted to make things right with Clarissa right from the beginning, and so I did not leave anyone behind. Did you?
That is, dude, I dumped Clarissa as soon as possible. I was so mad at her. We started out, I was like, oh, what a bunch of like teenagers that don't have a life, and she's like, I hate all of you. I'm like, bruh, where's the gun button? How do I shoot? And they're like, well, you can take all your friends and leave Clarissa. And then I was like, wait, seriously? And the character's like, wait, I could just leave right now? And they're like, yeah. I was like, bye. And it was great. I was like, awesome. It's a win-win.
Wow.
You know, she's gone. But I got Ren, and I saw your achievements on Steam. I think we had the same one where Ren and I've already forgotten her name. The girl, the shy, weird girl, they like get together, and our hero and her stepbrother are like friends. And I was like, this is the best possible ending. No more Clarissa. Everybody's happy. And they all forgot about her. We're all good.
Oh, man.
Oh, it was so good. The choices. I was so scared because they were like, we know what you're trying to do and it's not gonna work. And I was like, and they're like, we're gonna freaking kill all of you unless you like, give us Clarissa. I was like, you know what? That's a great deal.
Okay.
That's a great deal. Yeah, no problem. I really like everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good.
Man, that's funny. Okay. Well, let's go through from the beginning and kind of talk about our favorite parts and give like a little synopsis of the plot. And also, I think it is impossible to not talk about gameplay and mechanics at the same time as we talk about the narrative and the story. Because essentially the majority of the gameplay, despite what I expected as kind of a puzzle game, the majority of this game is a dialogue. You are talking to people this whole game, right? Yeah. That is the gameplay. Most of it is a point and click walking simulator for all intents and purposes, up until you pull out your radio, right? And even even with your radio, it really is not a puzzle. It is just a tune your radio until you get it right.
Exactly.
So you really do not use your brain very much when it comes to the in the world gameplay, but as soon as it comes to the discussions and the dialogue is where this game shines in terms of its mechanics. And so I think, let's just give a little rundown to give context to what happens in this world. So we start out, we've already talked about how you get to this island, you meet up with everybody, and you just kind of start walking around until you get to the beach. And when you're on the beach, you all sit down and talk. You'd like play this game, Truth or Not Truth or something, where it's like it's always truth it's truth or dare without the dare.
Gotcha.
And if you lie, someone like gets to hit you or something. I don't know. And so you just kind of sit there on the beach for a minute, and then you travel. I think it's with Ren and Jonas to the cave.
The cave with the radio.
Yes. And you go to these different spots and tune your radio to these parts in the cave, and you get these, like we talked about with the sound design, these really deep and spooky kind of radio noises with some cool lights that are shining. And when you get all of them, Jonas walks up and he says, oh, there's a light in the cave. He goes down and you follow him. You go into this big cavern where there's a big, just like a floating triangle up there, and you just tune your radio in. And as you do that, you open up a portal to like another dimension or something.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a portal to the past. I don't know exactly what this game was saying with that. Yeah.
Where they are, but open up the portal, everything goes white.
Yeah, I'm sure you could probably look up a million videos on YouTube about the theory behind what those things are in OXENFREE, but I just didn't have the time. and the story stands on its own without needing to know that.
Yeah.
Essentially, what that does is it opens up everything. Everyone gets teleported everywhere on the island, and you just kind of spend the rest of this time traveling around the island, mostly with Jonas, trying to get everyone back together and get off this island.
Yeah. Nobody else is there. Totally deserted.
Yeah. So then it's kind of open-ended. That's where I think a lot of the experiences probably differ, and a lot of the choices are made that will influence things. So let me see. What was like a highlight for you, or a few of the moments you had that you were your favorite as you played?
Let's see. Starting off, one of the first things that I was like, "Ooh, this is fun," is they had introduced the radio concept earlier when you tune in the cave, and then when you do that, Ren tells you, "Hey, if you stand by these pillars of rocks, these little piles, and tune in on your radio, then these weird noises happen." You're like, "Ah, this sure is great." And then you open a portal, and demons, you teleport, it's crazy. And then throughout the rest of the map, on the entire actual gameplay, as you explore the island and the buildings and things on it, there's these smaller piles of rocks where you can walk up and tune your radio and get like a little snippet of like flavor text and background info. And I didn't realize that for a while. And I was like, dang, that a pile of rocks looks just like those earlier pile of rocks. It's just a little smaller. I wonder if my radio will work. And like I figured it out kind of on my own that those were all there. And that was a good like, whoa, what the heck? I'm so smart. Oh, I'm tuning in. Oh, this is great. I thought it was pretty good that there's little things to discover throughout the world. Something that was really funny is when I was first starting, I played for like an hour, and you didn't get super far in that. We're just kind of wandering around, and I was like getting really spooked out because like the sounds were really intense. I was like, oh, this is kind of nuts. And we're trying to figure stuff out. We're in a communications tower trying to turn things on. I think we went into a house with Jonas, and like a lamp turns on suddenly, and I jumped super hard because I was so tense. I'm like, we're all gonna die. And then like someone turns on a lamp, and that was like the whoa, and I got like chills ran down my spine. I'm like, oh, it's a lamp. Calm down. That was super fun for me. Just like panic for a second. I was like, okay, if the lamp is scary enough to get me, they're doing a good job with the atmosphere, and even if it's a point and click. Oh,
Yeah.
it was good. It was fun. It was a really unique experience, I think, just to play through and realize as you go how much of an impact your choices actually have.
Yeah, honestly, I think for me, my favorite parts were those smaller moments, especially at the beginning of the game, like that first half, where those happen, because I think that's still where there's a lot of mystery about what the threat it actually is and what you're actually dealing with. And so when you go and the lamp turns on, you're like, literally anything could happen, right? And
Yeah,
so
you
you
have no
are
idea.
absolutely terrified of it. So that was awesome. I agree with that. My favorite moment, or at least one of my favorite like memorable moments for me, was when you get stuck in that first time loop with Jonas,
Ooh,
and you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
then discovering what happens. That's the one by the lake.
Mhm.
Um, and there's like a soccer ball that appears, and
Oh, that
all of
was
this,
weird.
and at one point Jonas disappears, and honestly my heart dropped. I was like, no, Jonas, no.
I just met you,
And because
brother.
Jonas is a great character, I like him a lot. um and so, and then eventually he does come back, and you kind of get out of this time loop. um but then there's like this, at one point there's like this creepy, like burnt into the side of this
Oh,
concrete, like
yes,
ghost
that was
looking thing
nuts.
with the red eyes, and I was like, oh my gosh. And that's one example of the moment where Jonas takes a picture, and then in the next loading screen you can actually see the shadowy figure behind Alex in the
Just
picture
staring at
with the
you.
red
Oh
eyes.
man.
Yeah. Really good, really well done. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the whole game. At least, I mean, there are other parts that made me feel similar to that, but it
Mhm.
was definitely a standout because it was the first time that it happened in the game.
Oh yeah.
Um, so let's see, and then I don't know. there was a point where everyone was arguing with each other
Hmm.
about what to do and who to like leave behind in the tower or whatever. And at this point in my game, Clarissa was gone
Uh-huh.
because when you
Same.
first go to see her, I don't know if you decide to leave her behind. Do you even go to Fort Milner to rescue her?
Well, I don't know. I left her behind at the end, so I was
Oh,
following
okay.
along like, oh, let's. I didn't think it was an option for a while. I was like, well, I guess we'll go get her. I guess we'll go get her. Fine. And then they were like, hey, want to leave? I was like, oh, yeah. So same. I think Jonas and Ren are arguing really harshly, right? Is this where you're at?
Yes.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
So it's
And
you,
they're like,
Jonas, Ren, and Nona,
mm-hmm,
and you have to decide who to take with you to go
mm-hmm,
and get this key. And
mm-hmm.
who did you pick?
I grabbed Nona. I was like, I don't want to deal with you guys. I hate confrontation. And I was like, you guys are just gonna whine about each other the whole way down. And then you're gonna be mean to Nona, and she seems nice. Hey, you want to just leave? They can duke it out. They'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
so it was funny because you hit that. Once you asked that, you're like, Nona, do you want to come? And both the guys in sync are like, what?
Yeah.
'Cause it just didn't occur to them.
I also picked Nona because I was like, you guys are both being idiots and you need some time to hold hands on the couch.
Exactly. I
Uh,
was like, go away, calm down.
yeah, you need to relax. Yeah, and I don't. Okay, I was just asking because I didn't know if like anything significant would change in how it happened
Mhm.
with Nona
That
or not.
maybe, I don't know.
Um, but I think now is a good time to mention that throughout the game you get a lot of flashbacks.
Mhm.
Flashbacks to your brother. So a little bit of Alex's story is that her brother died, and that created a rift between her parents, and so that is why they are divorced. And you have a stepbrother, Jonas. And so you kind of I don't know how to word it, but you get these backstory flashes throughout the game. Normally during the end, they increase during the near the end of the
Mhm.
game, and you kind of talk to your brother. I think it's a little bit weird how like much Alex just accepts it and she's okay with
Yeah,
it.
she just goes with
Uh,
it. She's like, I.
she's shocked for like 2 seconds and then she's like, "Oh, okay." And I think important thing to note is that Alex actually feels incredibly guilty for the death of her brother because
Mhm.
he died. I think while they were trying to teach, he was trying to teach Alex how to swim or something.
Something
Uh,
like that. Yeah,
he like
just reading
drowned.
now.
And
Mhm.
so she feels guilty, and of course Clarissa was actually dating her brother, and so that's why Clarissa hates her so much.
Mhm.
Is because she is angry at Alex for what she feels like is getting him killed. And that's kind of something that just pops up throughout the game and in the flashbacks. And what is interesting to me is you also get messages from yourself throughout this game.
That was interesting and a little bit weird.
And a little odd. I did not understand it right at first, but I kind of immediately thought, like, what if these are real players that are doing this? Right? What if
Mm.
these are real
Did
players that
yours
are.
did yours have usernames?
Mine did, yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because the first, I've got a buddy whose his username is Far Cry Woot. And so I'm in this spooky, house wandering around. I walk past the mirror and it goes Far Cry Woot. And I'm like,
Yeah. And
what?
didn't you
Yeah,
say
yours
that
showed
mine
up
showed up?
later. I'm just like chilling in the lake or something. And it's like Professor Pow. I was like, hey, well, what's going on? And then you said some cryptic dialogue and like, I was like, what does that mean? And then left. I was like, I don't understand. And it's not to the end that you get to be that person on the other
Yeah.
side of the mirror. And then I guess it reads your Steam and like if any of our friends play the game, then we could appear in their files. So
Which is
it
honestly
was
really
fun.
cool. I don't know
It
how
was
much
kind
it
of cool.
fit. I
Yeah,
thought
it was
because
so weird.
I took that advice as like, okay, you have to listen to this advice to get the best ending,
Hmm.
right? And so at some point, someone told me don't let Jonas talk to his mother, and so
Gotcha.
there's a point where he starts to hear his mother's voice through one of these tape players, and I'm like, Well, I do. We can't. No, you can't talk
No,
to.
no.
You can't talk to her because you're gonna die or something. I don't know. And so, but I only did that because someone told me not to, and I feel like I probably would have had a different outcome, and I would have let him if they hadn't. And so I thought it was interesting because when I was going through the story at the end of the game and doing that to everyone else, I had no freaking clue what the right thing to do
I
was,
didn't
right?
remember. Yeah,
No
yeah.
idea. And
Oh, it's funny.
I just kind of ended up repeating what everyone else did, who was like, don't influence your brother to make his choices. You know,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
whatever. And uh, I guess let's talk about the multiple endings and like the different
Hmm.
things you can get. So you kind of said what you did. I also, so I think we're pretty similar. I brought Ren and Nona together, and I also
Okay.
bonded with Jonas.
Okay.
So, but I also made up with Clarissa and got her off the island with us.
Weird.
Um,
Crazy. How how did that work out? What was the final scene? Did you go to the dimension with the monsters?
yeah, so it was odd because you have this final encounter with them, and you're on the other side of this portal, and you're
Hmm.
like filling in the triangle again.
Yeah,
Except this
yeah.
time Clarissa's there being like, "No, no,
Don't.
stop, stop."
Yeah.
Um, and which was odd because I actually kept talking to Clarissa and saying the things where, "Hey, you stop," and I like tried to appease the monsters, and I like ended up saying their name. I said the name of the
Oh.
monster, and the monster was like, "Was
Huh.
that our name? Did we have a name?" And they
Oh.
like kind of had a little. It was cool where they were like, "Is that had forgotten our name or my name?" Uh, and then I actually never completed the triangle.
Really?
Yeah, I never completed the triangle, and then the game just goes black and cuts to everyone on the boat. I thought that, and like Alex had passed out. Apparently, I thought I had died or something, and the end of the game was like starting over. But no, you wake up and everyone's like, "Ah, oh, she's awake. We're good. Yay! How's it? What's going on?" Um, and Clarissa's there, and she starts to. I think she's at that point she's forgiven you, and you just kind of are buddy buddy. It was interesting.
Huh. That is kind of interesting. I had a similar-ish, but still pretty different experience. Starting when we crawl down to the basement and Jonas starts to hear his mom, I was like, "Go for it, bro. That sounds good.
Yeah, I
Let's
really want to know what
too, man."
happened.
So I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he like tunes it and like listens, and I'm tuning the radio, and he gets like sucked away, and he's
Oh,
like gone. And I was like, oh, what?
oh
And then you're
no.
just alone down there, and I'm like, dude, what do I do? Do I like go back upstairs? Do I go confront the monsters? I was like, ah, so I just went to go fight the monsters. I was like, all right, sounds good. Like, I'm sure that'll work itself out. And went to fight them. And then I was like, I guess I ought to do. I felt like once again I was just playing what they wanted me to. So I started tuning the thing. And they're like, it's not gonna work. And then they had Clarissa over there all possessed. And
Hmm.
they're like, listen, we'll take us up on the deal. We'll take her and you guys could go free. And I was like, really? And then they opened a portal out behind me. And I was like, uh, that's it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, so I just walk out. It's like leave, and I like click leave, and it left. And same thing. Everything went white and black, and then I'm back on the boat, and they're like, woke up, and I was like, okay. And I'm like, it was all of us except Clarissa. And so I asked a couple questions, like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, sure. They remembered everything. And then I asked, what about Clarissa? And they're like, who? Who's that? It was just
Ooh.
us. And no one had any idea who she was except me. And then at the end, and then it's like, hey, we're all friends now. And I'm made up with the stepbrother and got the other two together. And then on her closing narration, she mentions that like nobody, not just the friends, but nobody ever remembered who Clarissa was or had seen her except me, and I thought about her every single day since and like carried on. And then the dialogue loops back to like. But anyway, me and my friends are heading out to the island this weekend.
Yeah.
I've got this new stepbrother. I hope it's okay. Like, and it starts to loop back. I was like, ah, look at us. We did it. We're back. We can keep going back over and over and experience new stuff. Okay.
Yeah. This is definitely a game that is made to be played multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think either of us did.
Nope, not in the slightest.
Yeah, not even close. For the other endings, I actually just like read on wikis and saw like what you could do to get the other endings.
What kind of stuff ends up? Do you always end up getting people out, or?
So there are a couple endings, like the obvious ones where Ren and Nona don't work out, whatever. Like those are somewhat inconsequential, but like for the major plotline story is you have. I think I essentially, without getting like the true ending, I think I probably got the best ending you can, because
It sounds like.
canonically you are stuck in this time loop, right? Because at the end of the game, you just loop back and you start the game again. And that's like in canon of the game, is that you're just in this time loop now. But I believe that on a second playthrough, at a certain point, you can radio communicate to past Alex before you even get on the boat with Ren, and they're like in a alcohol store buying some alcohol or whatever. And she gets this message, and they actually decide not to go to the island, thus breaking the loop.
Oh, that's super nuts. What the heck?
So yeah, it was really interesting, really interesting. And I think there's a lot of hidden stuff that I would like to have discovered that I just don't have the time to, nor honestly the interest.
I'm not big into replaying games. I feel you. Where I was like, it was good. I liked it. I saw what you gave to me. I don't feel invested enough in these characters to continue back over.
Yeah, although they were great characters, they did not have like the same iconic feeling as something like Undertale. I don't know if you've played Undertale.
Yeah.
But I think that is the best example I've ever experienced of a game with choices that are impactful. Although, they aren't like as subtle as this game is in terms of the choices, but they are just as impactful, I believe. Like being able to do a pacifist route or a neutral route, you get all these different endings and you get to see all these characters from different perspectives. And though it's definitely a different tone, that is a game that I had no problem replaying because I absolutely fell in love with it. And I don't know what the difference is here, because even though the writing is solid and the world is beautiful and all these things, I'm not entirely sure why it didn't grip me. It didn't just make me feel like I didn't fall in love with it where I just wanted to come back and do more and more. And so the fact that I don't know is the thing that is confusing me and that I am not sure about. I don't know if it's just a me thing, because I'm sure there are some people who just did fall in love with this. So I think it's probably just a me thing where I personally just did not resonate with these characters enough to want to go back and see everything that you can do to help with them. For me, looking on the wiki is enough to intrigue me and to satisfy me.
Yeah. I feel like, and to be fair, you don't have to replay the game to enjoy it. We definitely enjoyed it and liked it, and even if we didn't go back through, there's just a lot of depth there for people that maybe relate to the characters more or are more curious about what happens to them. And you can like dive in as deep as you want, but same way where I was like, well, that was fun, but I don't really care about you guys too much. Now that we got rid of Clarissa, everything's good. You'll live a happy life. Goodbye. Have fun. See you in part 2. And that was it.
I agree. Yeah. I do. I would say I am excited for the sequel. I think I might play it because especially I would recommend you watch the trailer because it is very it looks like they address a lot of the stuff that made this game a little bit hard to get through sometimes.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah. I gotta look into that. I didn't even know. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I want to see where they're gonna take it and what they've improved. That'd be super cool.
I believe it's called OXENFREE 2 Lost Signals, coming out this year.
Ooh, very sweet. Okay, that's awesome.
Which would be very soon. I should look that up. Okay. Let's see. So let's move on. We talked about I guess on the last little subject of narrative and story, and we did talk about
Hmm.
the mechanics and the gameplay while we did that.
Hmm.
Um, what was this game fun? Did you think this game was fun?
Hmm. That's honestly not a straightforward answer that I have. There were a few things that I didn't enjoy as much as I felt like I could. First thing was that I wasn't sure what kind of game this was. It wasn't really well communicated. This is kind of a, like an exploratory game that you will get the most out of this if you take your time exploring the areas, using the radio to listen to the signals at rocks, running into the monsters, and like I did some quizzes with them and some stuff, and I didn't understand. I played it so like railroaded straight through. This and because I thought that was the type of game it was. You look at games that are story based, like the Uncharted series or something like that, where
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're viewing the story, not creating the story. And that's totally fine. The games are phenomenal, they do great. I thought that's what this was, but this is much more like you create the story, and it took me until I was almost done with the game to realize it. And there was one other bit that I didn't like where at the with Jonas, once I figured out, dang, I make all these decisions, and Jonas like teleports away to go view his mom. We like nobody cared. We just I just finished the game, and it
Mm-hmm.
ended up feeling very much like I was the only person that mattered. That the characters were nice and all, but they're just flavor text. I'm the actual main character. What I do matters, and I decide whether they live or die. I decide who gets off the island. And so I thought it was intriguing to play. I thought it was interesting, but the fact that I don't really care enough about anybody else to go back, and that my story seemed to be the only one that I cared about. We didn't get any flashbacks for anybody else. We got
Mm-hmm.
hints that they might have had flashbacks about people and their, dad issues with their fathers and some other things, but I was like, yeah, none of you matter. It's just me. What type of game is this? And eventually, you kind of figure out towards the end what's going on, and then it allows you to go play through. But I thought the game was enjoyable and unique and like a breath of fresh air, especially with a lot of the games I played just being shooters. And this was like
Yeah.
super like, what? There's no ammo packs. There's no, quick scoping. What is this? It was like really, I thought it was fun to play, but it was not the most fun I've had in a game. I thought the story was good, but there were some things I wish they'd done a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, fun game. I'd rate it like throw something on that, like an 8 out of 10. Like it was solid. It was solid. I recommend this to anyone that likes narrative-based stories.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people will enjoy this, but it definitely has the realm of like walking simulator type game
Hmm.
to it, where you really are not doing much except walking around. And now that I think about it, when I think about mechanics, I think that might be why this game didn't have staying power for me.
Mm.
Because when I look at Undertale, Undertale is fun to play. Like you take out
Yeah.
the story, it has a unique combat system, right?
Hmm.
And it is interesting to solve combat puzzles, and there are puzzles in that game to solve. And this game, it is really just a vehicle for the story, and that's exactly what
Yeah.
it feels like, right? It doesn't feel like you are doing something fun in conjunction with this cool story. You are literally just there to experience the story, and it doesn't feel like it has anything unique to say when it comes to its gameplay.
Hmm.
And I think that might be why I had a hard time playing this for more than an hour or two at a time.
Yeah. Agreed. That when it came down to it, it felt more like an interactive movie than
Exactly.
a video game.
Exactly.
The few challenges that you face are kind of like, I know I'm gonna end up okay. There were a few times, I don't know if this happened to you, where the monsters would come out and like quiz you on something or something like
Yeah.
that, and I was like, ah, shit, like I tried my best and got some of them right and some of them wrong, and it was fun. but for the most part, there wasn't much game, meaning something you could win or lose and had to use skill and ability to achieve. It was more an experience, which is great and awesome in its own way, but I would keep that in mind to anybody interested in trying the game. You're not going to be getting a game where you need to be actively engaged and there's a lot going on. You're getting a really, really well done interactive film kind of feeling,
Hmm.
where it's an experience more than it is a competition.
I totally agree. It is much more like essentially a movie, which honestly, I feel like I wish it leaned into it a little bit. I wish it just kind of would
Mhm.
automatically take you to places. I felt like the walking was almost a little annoying because of how janky it could be. And
Yeah.
like you couldn't vault over objects unless you like clicked to vault over the
Right?
objects, which
Right, I
was a
couldn't
little
just
bit
use the
annoying.
keyboard.
But
Hmm.
I definitely think that is notes for a sequel, right? I
Exactly.
think
Exactly.
this game really could have benefited from something more deep in terms of its gameplay than what we got.
Hmm.
Um, that personally for me is what would have kept me invested, because if I was having fun solving puzzles and being freaked out,
Oh
oh
yeah.
man, it would have been I would have been so much more ecstatic about this game.
Hmm.
Um, so
I
I
think
guess no, go ahead.
that's something that the indie game developers have to deal with is, how do we put they have all these ideas, how do you put them together with the budget and time and people that you have? But considering the overwhelming success of this game to the market that it reached, it's not a super popular game. Like it's not nearly as well known as Undertale or Stardew Valley or little like indie. A few people made this kind of game, but it has so much potential behind the type of story making that I'm really excited for the sequel to see how they, now that they've achieved and now that they've learned a lot and certainly gotten plenty of reviews just like us, telling them what players thought, where are they going to take it? And the future could be huge for that. You look at like a game like Rocket League, which did not start out as Rocket League, and yet the sequel to their original game is what they polished it all up and figured out what they needed to do right.
Yeah, I exactly. And let's move on to the next section actually.
Mhm.
Development and community of this game. This won't be a long one, but I do think we are kind of just naturally segueing there. I think that this game actually does have, based on what I've heard, a TV show in the works. It
Really?
was going to be a movie, but then I think it's now down to a TV show. At least that's what I
That would,
read.
dang.
Um,
Yeah.
I think, which is great. I think this actually fits a lot better as
Hmm.
because I feel like if you're going to make a game, you should make it a game, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think if that's what they want to do, I think that's perfect. A
I
TV
think that'd be really
show
cool.
would fit this universe great. I feel like it could be
Hmm.
very interesting. Um, that being said, I do think that they could make a very compelling game, and I think this sequel has a lot of potential.
Yeah, they have a lot of options open to them in either expanding it more and adding more puzzle-like gameplay, which is what is gonna fit here, or like pivoting to like more broader media like film and TV.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be seen on that front, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that could be in the future for this universe and for the development studio.
Hmm.
I watched a couple videos on. It was like a little documentary style 10-minute thing about how they did the story for this game and what really happened. And it looks like, for the most part, the all of the dialogue was written by one guy.
Wow.
And I think he might have been an ex Telltale employee, which would make sense.
There we go. There we
Uh,
go. That
y-
makes sense.
yeah, and so uh, it looked like basically what they did was they actually. So the little bit of the story is that they would go in. He would come in with like several pages of dialogue like every day, and he'd be like, "Put this in the game." And he'd give it to the
Dang.
people, and they would put the dialogue in the game in terms of the subtitles, and they actually
Hmm.
had that done first, and then they hired people to come in and record it and get it done that way. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think they based on what I saw, is that every single line of dialogue was recorded in a vacuum with no one. They never had two people recording together in the same studio.
Oh, so
Um,
like completely silent. Huh.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure once they had some lines done, some of them could listen to the other lines to react off of, but they never
Mhm.
actually were together, like acting off of each other, playing off of each other, which is interesting because this
Yeah.
game makes it feel like that so well.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
kind of like stitched everything together and put it in after the fact. So it is very big feat in that regard, I think.
hmm
Uh,
Yeah,
I think they were kind of shooting themselves in the foot with how they did that. Not gonna lie, but it did come together really well, and I didn't even notice until I looked it up.
yeah, everything feels the voice acting and the writing are the key features. That's what's up on the pedestal right now. Is that is what carries the game, and that is like, here is where this game. What do we have that's different from everybody else, than any other story? Why don't I just go play Telltale game stuff?
Hmm.
Well, here is why. Because of this voice acting and this dialogue is above and beyond anything that you get in your average game.
Yeah, for sure. That is definitely what it brings to the table. That is unique and well done. And the thing about this is that it is a game, and so it does give you the opportunity to have branching stories and different timelines. You really can't get that in any other medium. And so, in that regard, that is why it is a game, and that's why it's justified as a game. I just wish it leaned into it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
On that topic, are you ready to move into our subtitles and brief reviews?
Sounds good. Why don't you lead us in?
Okay, I would love to. So, my subtitle for this is, I guess to give context, is we want to do like at the end of every one of these podcasts, we'll just say, give the game that we played a subtitle that we think fits and then explain why and give a little bit of a review based on that.
Mhm.
So the subtitle that I went with is Oxenfree Unexpected Circumstances or Consequences.
Mm,
Unexpected Consequences. Um,
unexpected.
yes, as in the
That's
ghostly
good.
apparitions.
Hey, there you go.
So I wrote down here my thoughts and I'll just read it out. Oxenfree is a very ambitious game when it comes to the story that it tried to tell. Though sometimes the lack of significant things to do when you aren't making dialogue choices can make it feel a little bit more like a waiting game while you travel to the part of the map to get to the next part of the story. Uh, that was only on rare occasions, however, because this game truly shines in its ability to engage its story and keep you guessing on what might happen next. The choices you make in this game really do matter, even if you aren't sure what might happen. Yeah. When you make a decision, yikes. Hence the title, Unexpected Circumstances. Or, gosh dang it,
Yeah.
Unexpected Consequences.
There we go. There we go.
I
All
keep
right.
misreading my own handwriting.
Oh man, that's funny.
Okay, what is
Dang.
yours?
All right, so I went kind of dark here. Oxenfree, your choices will kill them. And the
Mm.
game at the end started to get really, really intense. And not only did I dislike Clarissa, thus being the reason I left her to die or whatever it is, but also I wasn't sure whatever I was going to do was going to work. To kind of tie into the review, the game does a really great job with dialogue and with writing and with setting, and it sets you up and works you through the story in a way that you don't really expect it to. This isn't your average, Scooby-Doo-esque, let's parade through and figure out the baddie in the end. You are dealing with something that you don't understand that can do things that you don't want it to do. And as the game continued, I began to feel a lot like our main character, helpless and scared because I didn't know how to save everybody. This creature, these entities had such a control
Specters.
that yeah, the specters, there we go. Had such a control. I was like, I don't know if what I felt like the character. The game did a phenomenal job of helping you sit sit in the shoes of someone who's actually going through this experience where she didn't know what was going to work or why it could work. There was no like, here's how the system works. It's like, good luck, bye. And I was worried about that and decided to, you know what, my choices are going to kill somebody. Might as well be the worst person in the group. It's been real, everybody. I don't want the ending where we all die. See ya. And I dipped. I
There you
thought the
go.
game as a whole came together in a really fresh way. I would absolutely recommend this to anyone that enjoys games for more than just the gameplay. If you appreciate the art and the music and the things that make video games what they are, this is a great way to experience a lot of that without having too much of something to, you don't need quick reaction times. You don't need lots of lore. You don't need, very precise aim or anything like that. You just need to experience the story and do what you think is best. Game is really good.
I very much agree. I think, well, this game really could have benefited from a better sense of threat. I feel like
Hmm.
your character itself really is never in very much danger. Um, I do overall agree that this is a very artistic game. This is a game that took a risk in not making it gameplay based. I think, and I do think it paid off by diverting all of their resources to just having this dialogue and these choices and these branching paths. It makes it feel like you are, like you said, you are Alex. You are this person going through this world who feels a little bit helpless and lost and confused, especially if you go into this blind. So if you have watched up to this point, it is too late.
Exactly.
um,
Sorry.
but that being said, I do think there are a lot of different. I think the experience of discovering these things yourself is definitely one that is worth it, and especially at the price of what, like $10. It
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely worth it, and it is only like maybe 5-6 hours long.
Oh yeah. It was
Certainly,
quick.
certainly worth the time, worth the money. I do think, and there's very much a lot of replay value here. So I think anyone can get into this and enjoy it. Uh, so yeah, I rate it a big old high five.
Hey, there you go. I give it a 3 thumbs up. It was good. It was a good game.
Amazing, amazing.
Awesome.
Well, that does it for our first episode of Digital Donuts. We appreciate
Hmm.
anyone who joined us and listened. And thank you, Or Father, for hopping in with me and doing this.
Absolutely.
Upcoming this next month, we will be playing a new game that I don't know what it is.
We're
We
gonna
haven't
find out
decided
soon.
yet. We will find out soon. And we'll be coming at you with another podcast. So
Should be
thank
good.
you for tuning in, and we hope all of you have a good one. And
We'll
that
see you
is-
next time.
Yeah, Digital Donuts signing off.